Oh, no, you're fine.
If this happens,
on this computer, probably. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to the intermediate unit to view and hear our presentation of the general operating budget for, believe it or not, school year 2019 and 20. Thanks to those who have joined us via Zoom. For those who have joined us Zoom, if you have questions throughout the presentation, don't hesitate to utilize the chat function that is located on the bottom middle of your screen. Also, at the end of the presentation, you would have the opportunity to unmute yourself to ask a question for the group. We have about 10-15 people here physically and about 8 to 10 via Zoom. So first I want to thank Lynn Liu for all of her hard work in putting this all together. So many unknowns, as you know, with budgets, and she makes it work. And so thanks, Lynn, for all of her hard work for putting this all together. And I know that they're going to be thankful of the organized presentation you're going to give this morning. So without further ado, Lynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you again also for attending the presentation today. Similar to my prior presentations, I don't plan on going through the actual general budget page by page. I will present areas where there have been some significant changes. I'll also try to reference those pages, which I did in the narrative in the package that came out to you. I have a short PowerPoint presentation to share, and I would just ask that, given the nature that we're on Zoom and also some folks in person, if you'll just hold some questions till the end of the presentation, and then we can take those questions. I also did get some questions in advance that I have answers to, so I'll be able to address those as well at the end. Joining us today is Dr. Conway, our Executive Director, Tim Hamill, our Director of Curriculum Services, Eric Vaughn, Director of Technology and Infrastructure, and Dr. Thomas, our Student Services Director. And I also want to thank CC for being here this morning. So budget timelines, the presentation obviously today to our joint superintendents and business managers will be presented initially to our board next Tuesday, the 22nd. It will go to a vote at our board on February 26th, after which time it will end up going out to the districts. We ask that you try to have it on your March agendas if possible, because if you have a late April meeting, my deadline to enter the data into PDE is May 1st. So we need to have all the proportionate vote shares and everything to be able to enter into PDE. So if you can have it on your March agenda for vote, that would be great, but if not, we do have April availability. The budget format is, the organizational structure is the same as prior years with 4 divisions. Executive Services does include HR. We have Financial Services, Technology and Infrastructure Services, and Curriculum Services. Also similar to last year, we have revenue and expenditure items associated to the 215 Donald Road for Clairview School. Last year, the revenue, the expenditures and revenue were in there. There's a shortfall of around 51,000, almost 52,000 was budgeted. This year, there's a little bit of an increase to that. I'll get into that in a little bit. The budget assumptions that we used, the directors, there are two of us that are board contracted, so we actually use those contracts with the board for those two directors. The Act 93 salaries, we budgeted a 2% increase, except for a few people who are already at a max, or their salary exceeds a market reference point that was based on a PASPA study? PASPA study.
No,
PSBA, started a study that was done several years ago. Our support staff salaries are budgeted at an hourly increase similar to prior years, but keep in mind our current contract with support staff expires at the end of this year, so we're currently in negotiations. And the benefits, medical and dental, I budgeted medical and dental at a 2% increase based upon a 5-year average. I know we did have a small reduction in medical last year, but I don't know if that's going to continue, and in the prior years we did have increases. There is no increase in vision based upon the renewal that we have in effect that takes us through 2020. As far as staffing changes go, the director level, we have no changes whatsoever. Act 93, where we will be down one position, and that position is being eliminated after a retirement that occurs at the end of this year. It's an applications development support or application development specialist person who has indicated retirement, and we're not going to replace that position. And there's no change in support staff. On an FTE basis, I think I shared in the package that came out to you, it's 30 headcount, 29 FTEs, because we do have 2 custodians who are only part-time at this building. With regard to our 17-18 year, our audit was just finished. We're in the process of trying to get everything done with a single audit and federal clearinghouse, but I wanted to share the information with you. The 2016-17 audited numbers were shared with you last year. The numbers on the right for 17-18, we started off the year with $3.9, almost $4 million in fund balance. The reclassifications that are there, our board decided in the spring to commit additional fund balance toward capital projects, including the auditorium, the former auditorium that you're in, as well as to cover the shortfall that we had in Crossroads program when it closed last year.
Then, can you just pause for a second?
Sure.
We're having, they're saying no audio on their end.
Sorry,
So,
I technically can't do that. Am I too far away from the mic?
is anyone able to hear?
Can you hear me?
All right. So go ahead and ask that question again. Lynn.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Do I need to start over, or do you need me to back up?
Okay.
Should I mute them all again?
Okay. All right, we'll start this page again. We started the year with around $4 million in fund balance.
Lynn muted. Is Lynn muted?
No, I'm not.
No. Okay, go ahead, Lynn.
The board, we had 2 motions on our board. One was to commit fund balance of about $525,000 for the renovation of this space, which included contingencies, as well as the contracts that we had from the general contractor, the electrical contractor. And we also had the excess in fund balance from last year of $662,000 and change that we had them commit, or that they committed based on a recommendation, to be able to be used for future debt service and capital projects, or capital projects. Because we knew that we had the financing that we put into place for the Act 39 project that we did, replacing the HVAC units here at this building and lighting, as well as the HVAC units and lighting at Clarity. We financed $1,350,000 of that $1,600,000 project. So we knew that we had that debt service on an ongoing basis. That debt service is about $153,000 a year. So on a restated basis, our fund balance was almost $2.8 million. We had revenues of Sorry. We're having some technical difficulties.
It's coming through.
Is it okay? All right. The revenues for 27-18 were almost 5.8, and the expenditures were 5.9. I will get into that a little bit in the next slide. So we had a reduction in fund balance of almost $100,000. We can start over if you need me to. Do you need me to start over?
They sure can.
Should we start over?
The first 4 slides were what came in the narrative. So through the staffing changes was something that you had ahead of time. This page, I'll just recover this, I apologize for those in the room. We started the year with a beginning fund balance of almost $4 million. In the spring of this year, our board, based upon recommendations, committed additional fund balance to be able to use for capital projects and for debt service. And to cover Crossroads' shortfall in the program. When we closed Crossroads program, there was 5 months of lease remaining with Henfield that we still had because of the, we had to get a mutual end of that agreement. So we had 5 months of lease in that building that we had, that we incurred. So when we ended 16-17, we had $662,000 surplus. We've committed that fund balance, or that toward committed fund balance, as well as $525,000 of our unassigned fund balance, to be able to deal with this space and the construction of it. We didn't want to finance any more than we already had with the Act 39 project, and this didn't qualify for Act 39. So again, the revenues were almost 5.8, expenditures were almost 5.9. So we had a use of fund balance of about $100,000 for 17-18.
Just to kind of tear apart the fund balance a little bit, our fund balance, we have a very small restricted piece. It's autistic programs, principals academy, and library media access funds. The committed fund balance of $751,000 and change existed from like 2010-2012 timeframe. Our board had committed that toward capital projects years ago. So we began the year with complete total fund balance of 5.4. Only about almost 400,000 that was unassigned. And like I said, we committed the additional funds of the $1,938,000, which was the excess surplus from 16-17, and then the additional funds to deal with this building or this room. We also had funds in a medical access. They were the administrative claiming funds that we had received from the state over years. I think whether we talked to Denny Hladnik, it had accumulated from probably late 2000s. So we had $686,000 of those funds. We had asked the Department of Human Services when they were here for training one time, those MAC reimbursement claims, what we use that money for. They said that it's really ours. We can use it for anything that we want. However, they would hope that we would use it in line with what medical access program costs are allowable. We decided as a cabinet to assign that fund balance. It's not committed, but it's assigned. And we used a significant portion of that on the excess costs in Clairview's program last year. When we budgeted Clairview last year, we budgeted for 120 students. We ended up having 101. So it was about a 16% reduction in attendance. So we ended up with significant costs in that program. And we weren't going to try to settle that with the districts that had students there. Your tuition costs would have been very, very high. So we actually used in excess of $440,000 for the Clairview program last year. And then the unassigned fund balance is general op, basically. The 17-18 budget actual comparison, the revenues that were budgeted was $5.4 million. We had 5.8. I can tell you that the where we were over, we had 240,000 additional revenues in the academy, about 90,000 in technology that wasn't budgeted, related to things like fraud check applications, additional costs, or additional districts that came on to using the fraud check application, our MERP application that we have pushed out to other districts, internet services and fingerprinting, which really ramped up here significantly at one point, and then we ended up backing that off because it was very difficult to maintain the product or being able to provide that service. And then we had about $75,000 of additional core money beyond what we budgeted for that came over to the general fund last year.
For the fingerprinting, that is outside.
Outside.
So indicators and so on,
We still
get
do.
fingerprints, and that big bubble is coming. So we're still able to provide that service. We're just not opening it outside for other purposes.
Right. I broke it down, the expenditures by division, so that you can see the increase or decrease based upon the division activity. I think part of curriculum I know was the academy, but the other part of curriculum was we did get additional requests throughout the year for ESL services, so we added staffing there as well. But overall, we ended up, like I said, just with a deficit of about $100,000. The line item that I will point out here of 137.6, those dollars were absorbed by the general budget, but they were related to work discoveries program. Before Dr. Sholo left, he and I were trying to get our arms around work discovery because it was running into a shortfall every year. We did not settle that program with districts. We charged a $40 per unit, which was 2.5 hours for the service. And we had at the time, I think we had a supervisor, 2 job coach mentors, and job coaches, but there was also transportation in that as well. And it ended up, like I said, with this deficit that we ended up observing, because it's not something we're going to settle with you all without being able to identify what it is and why it's happening. We have restructured the program under Dr. Thomas's direction this year. We have 2 job coach mentors and the job coaches. We ended up investigating, and the transportation for that is IEP driven, so it is eligible for the subsidy. Also, the supervisor that was over that program is not in that program anymore. So that burden has been taken out. So we've been tracking it on a monthly basis, and it is working fine with the $40 a unit. So we don't see any ramifications of that coming up at year end. As far as the proposal that you have for 1920 as compared to 1819, the local revenue has increased, again, because of program specific trends that we're seeing here. Our state revenue is up just slightly, and then our federal and others are down. And then by division, the expenditures are also spelled out here as far as the change year over year. Before I get to the member contributions, I do want to focus on a couple of the highlights that I pointed out in the package that was emailed. We ended up with ESL services. We know that we have more demand. We've hired 2 additional 2 additional staff members to address the needs that have been coming to us. So we have the increased revenue and expenses associated with that. Tim and I also looked at the trends in E-Academy for the last 3 years. When I came in 17, in January of 17, budgeting for 17-18, we saw some growth in 16-17, but we were in the midst of that year. So it was very difficult to really get our arms around what to project. And Jim Cassell and I were both very, very new. So, you know, we looked, Tim and I took a good look at the last 3 years trends, 16, 17, 17, 18, where we're at so far in 18, 19. And we do see substantial growth in E-Academy, partly because of the breadth of course offerings that are there, as well as I think the improvements that have been occurring with the implementation of Genius and some other things. So we budgeted for that similar increase in E-Academy revenue. If that does not happen, we will not incur the additional costs that go along with that. So Again, we were trying to be realistic, but conservative as well. Technology and infrastructure. I know that Eric and I talked a lot about the different services that are out there. His contracts don't come up until spring. So we took a look at where we're at, what he seems to have a pulse on. So we've used the current contracts in place. If those change, obviously that will change us as well. But with the unknowns, we went with what we know today. Technology and infrastructure. I mentioned the revenue from Clairview is down. We have 5 vacant classrooms projected for next year. We had 4 last year. The 5th classroom is really an unknown because while we've taken a look at the Clairview statistics, we have 108 students. It's been fairly stable throughout this whole year so far. That compares to 101 last year in the various programs, enrolled in the various programs that are at Clairview. The unknown is that we have the 2 EI classrooms are still going to be rented there. The unknown is we had 2 Headstart programs there years ago that were rented. Now we're down to 1 as of last year. They came to us and said that their enrollments were continuing to go down and they couldn't pay really the market rent of the square footage rental that we would have been charging. So it's to us, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to come back in that space, and that's the 5th classroom that we have budgeted as a vacant. When they came back to us last year, their rent would have been close to $16,000, $17,000. They said they could probably do half of that at most. So, we allowed them to pay that half for this year because we figured some revenue is better than none. However, I don't think with the continuing decrease in their enrollment in that space, they're going to be able to continue that cost. So we won't know that for a couple of months. The core funds, we are allowed to use a portion of core funds to support administrative services that are provided to student services. We do that based upon an FTE equivalency analysis. There are obviously a lot more staff in student services there than there are in the other areas of our, in EI and general op together. But as a proportionate share, we're allowed to use some of those funds after core funds are used for things like the student services director salary, support staff, things of that nature. In 18-19, we had put the Clairview principal's salary and benefits in that program, and we will continue to do that to defray the costs over at Clairview. And Dr. Thomas and I we're not yet developing the student services budgets. Those will be done within a couple of months. But we've talked about ideas about where there's some additional core funds that could be leveraged in student services to reduce some costs. So I've not budgeted, we budgeted in the past around $1.2 million, $1.25 million. I budgeted $1 million because given that we were budgeting an increase in the academy revenue, I wasn't comfortable with saying that we're going to continue the core. We should really evaluate what we can use in student services first, and then I'm budgeting just $1 million of transfer from core. The statewide system of support is very dynamic, I guess that's the word I can use. When we budget the statewide system of support grants, which are part state and part federal, those are really truly unknown. I'm in 18-19. I budgeted for those in January of last year. I still don't know as of today what my balance of statewide system support grants are. We know some of the scope of work that we need to do, but we don't know the dollars. So I do know that there's a decrease from last year to this year. They've already told us that. They've changed some structures. There was a federal and state portion of effective standard-based instruction. They've broken that down into STEM, equity, TDA, text-dependent analysis, and career readiness. Oh, STEM. I did say STEM, sorry. So they changed names and so they are very late in the game and when they let us know this stuff. So again, we're using outdated numbers, but it's the best that we can do at this point. And just so you know, or just to kind of reinforce, the general operating budget contribution has decreased by about 50%. So the total contribution amount from the member districts is $140,665. On the expenditure side, the only other change too, in the indirect costs, we did budget additional indirect costs. Indirect costs are the amounts that we can get from programs with PDE that we report through e-grants as a portion of administrative costs. That gets tracked by PDE at this point. There are supplemental schedules to our AFR that we have to put together in order to, for them to calculate those amounts. When I first got here, it was about 2.32%. It went up to 6%. It's at 7.82% for next year. So that's a good sign. So we did budget for that increase. As far as expenditures, we decreased what we had budgeted for our solicitor just because we were in professional staff contract negotiations last year, so we budgeted additional expenses related to that. We added a new safety and security line item in our building maintenance area, and that is really to have, we're having an assessment done by the State Police Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Team in the spring. There is no cost for that assessment. However, the recommendations that they're going to put forth for this building, we need to be able to implement. So we've just used $25,000 because we weren't sure where to go with it. Eric had looked at the potential cost of security cameras for this building, as well as perhaps bollards out front for the lobby to protect that area. So again, that's upcoming, but we put that line item in.
And IUs were not eligible for Part A.
Oh,
of
that
the
44.
grant. So we did not receive that $25,000 that district.
Right. The other increase in the building repairs and maintenance is last year we tore out all of the arborvitae around this building, had the building pressure washed after the Act 39 project was completed. At this point now, we just wanted to be able to get some landscaping done and finish up, getting some things completed. So there is an amount in there, as well as we had estimated a property increase in our property coverage of 3 to 5%, and then we're looking at an environmental policy. Given where everybody's experienced in some environmental issues or has the a chance of experiencing environmental issues, we're looking into that policy. We have been talking with the broker. It's a $10,000 premium for $1 million of coverage. There can be some significant deductibles, 25, 40,000, depending upon what the environmental effect is or the environmental damage is. However, we're looking at the fact that we've got this building, and we also are responsible for Clearview under that triple net lease. So we don't want to be left with a situation where we have several $100,000 of damage that we need to rectify that we have no way to really do that. In technology, there were some decreases in the salary and benefits area. Again, that's partly because of the reduction of that application design specialist position that's going to be eliminated upon his retirement. And then we also allocated a portion of technology support and clerical support that are out of Eric's area that support E-Academy. So we have a portion of a secretary and 2 support technical support folks who help support the E-Academy program. So we reclassified or realigned those salary and benefits. And then the Cisco umbrella and Cisco AMP that was identified and highlighted separately. I did get some clarification around that with Eric. Bear with me a second. One of the questions that I got ahead of time was the increase in expense related to AMP and umbrella appears much larger than the corresponding increase in revenue. It's not a dollar for dollar replacement because the previous cost was for a completely different type of solution. It was content filtering that was done. There wasn't revenue associated to that for us. The previous cost, last year, Eric worked with districts to establish a consortia for both Cisco AMP and Cisco Umbrella to provide next generation malware protection in addition to content filtering. Most districts were able to eliminate their need for the content filtering solution that they used, and they can use the features of Cisco Umbrella. In addition, by participating in one or both, districts were able to leverage deeper discounts by combining the FTE endpoint numbers to reach higher discount levels with Cisco. And then the 2 Cisco products, like I said in the summary, it's about $165,000. We anticipate revenue offsetting that of about $160,000, so the net cost to the IU is $5,000. But Eric did share with me that in forming those 2 consortia, the savings were in excess, the combined savings of the districts were in excess of $280,000 because of the costs that you would have incurred if you went out on your own to get their service. And then the last thing that was a significant change was the decrease in the technology lease. We have a new 4-year lease for technology equipment, and it was to replace, I'm gonna have to defer to Eric on the type of equipment that was there.
Yeah, it's
Data center.
the Cisco core data center for the fiber optics that connect each district.
So that was replaced in the summer. And where the first year's payment of that was made in October under a 4 lease. So, that at this point is the only technology lease that we have. And the remaining technology leases that we had are done and paid. In summary, the 2019-20 budget does reflect an overall increase of 10%, with the vast majority of that growth coming in local programs. I'll back up for a second. I do have a couple other, I tried to touch on some of the questions that were submitted to me beforehand, but I will back up and cover the additional ones that I received. One of the ones was a request to have 17-18 actual data included in the call presentation format. I tried to summarize some of that data in the PowerPoint presentation, and I will send out the PowerPoint presentation to everyone afterwards so that you have it. And if you have any follow-up questions, you certainly are welcome to get in touch with me. And if it's really specific data related to a division activity, I can get folks here involved. We're currently working with Weidenhammer on a project really to re-implement our Alio system. Whenever that system was put in I believe 2013, we converted from an AS400 system and converted data over. So whatever needed to be done to get that system up and running was done. What we're not being able to leverage or use is for Alio to work the way it's intended to. The HR portion of the system should have position controls that are authorized positions by the board in there. We have people. We have people that are on payroll. So we need to build out that system to really be what it needs to be, and we're doing that with Weidenhammer now. So we're in the process of re-implementing Alio for 1920. So, my plan is to implement that going forward, but I did share some summary data, and if you have more detailed questions around the divisional activity, please let me know. I addressed the question, another question was around the academy. There is a portion of the allocation, portion of the fee goes to the teacher teaching the course based on enrollments. There's a portion of the fee comes to the IU, and then a portion that goes to the course owner. That course owner could be a district, the IU, or a third party. And what do we anticipate the projected course cost for 2019-20 to be? The only thing that Tim and I were talking about when we dealt with 18-19 and implemented Genius into the academy program, there was an annual licensing fee as well as a per course enrollment fee. We are bearing that this year because we knew we needed to implement that and get that the academy to the point where it was state of the art and needed to be where it needed to be. We're going to continue to pay the annual license fee. The thing that we would suggest, or that we're suggesting, is that $6 increase in per semester courses and $9 increase in per year course fees. And that's only to cover the cost that Genius is bearing to us. So that would be the increase that we would anticipate. We don't anticipate anything else. I was asked about the Clairview enrollment, the classroom projection. Was it realistic based on enrollment, demographics, and trends? As I mentioned, Dr. Thomas and I did take a look at where we're at. As far as the classroom structures that are over there, we will be adding an emotional support classroom, but there's one less life skills classroom, so those kind of netted out. But everything else is stable, so we're comfortable with that, and we'll proceed with our budgets for the spring on that basis. And I mentioned the unknown with the Headstart classroom. The needs and student services that are necessitating additional core, it's not necessarily that there are needs, there's just opportunities. What Dr. Thomas and I are looking at is, Dr. Schulel and I worked on the fact that we were trying to reduce or keep Clairview viable. So we took out the principal's salary and benefits from that program and put into the core. We're going to look at other programs that could have heavy burdens on with salary and benefits and see what else we might be able to restructure. So as we look at different areas, he and I are going to be looking at that. That's why, again, we don't have specifics of needs that are saying that we have to drive it, drive the change and use more core funds for special ed, but we are trying to do that to defray costs. on the services fees.
Will that be reflected in this year's budget? You're able to save some money?
In the, in Clairview, yeah, I mean, if we can find additional ways to defray Clairview costs, yes. But it could be it could be speech and language pathology, itinerant services, or it could be hearing or vision services. Hearing and vision services are very difficult at this point to obtain, and there's a shortage of available people to do that. So we want to remain competitive. So we're looking at those types of programs as well. Yes.
I need to understand the
Mhm.
At the beginning of the presentation, we were talking about for 8 to 19, we have 20 slots budget, and that we experienced a huge issue with cost because in reality, I think that 2, and then later it's been steady at 100.
Right. Let me repeat the guide.
Yeah, make sure you repeat the question.
I will.
So if we're now budgeting for 5 for an additional classroom, what is that classroom? What's the enrollment that we're now budgeting for?
Okay, the question was related to in 17-18, for Clairview, we had originally budgeted in 17-18 120 students, and that was based upon the prior enrollments. We ended up with the year being about 101 at 17-18, so it was a 16% reduction in the enrollments. For 18-19, we have been experiencing around 108. That classroom that we're adding to the general op burden was a Headstart program. It had nothing to do with Clairview classroom enrollments. So that's the additional vacant classroom that we had. The only shift with 108 students, we still have the same level of classroom needs that we had. It's just going to fluctuate slightly between emotional support and life skill support. That's the only difference. We'll have one more emotional support classroom and one less life skill support classroom. Did that answer your question?
It does, but now we clarification on the Headstart.
Yes.
So the Headstart program has expressed that they can't pay the rent because of declining. Explain that.
Yeah, Dr. Oldham asked about the Headstart program and where we're at with that and that program. That program originally housed 2 classrooms in Clairview. They came to us, I'm going to say in the fall of 17, and said that they needed to go down to 1 classroom. They couldn't have 2. They didn't have the supporting enrollments in their classes. And the Headstart is just taking space in that building. We have nothing to do with running those Headstart programs. It's run by, I believe, Westmoreland Case Management or Community Action, Westmoreland Community Action.
So then the Headstart program mentioned in the budget for the classroom.
No, it's the remaining 1 classroom they had that they kept last year, but that student enrollment is still declining, and they couldn't pay the market rate for that space. They paid us $8,400, and they're not sure that they're going to be able to return and take that 1 classroom that they had last year. So they went down from 2 to 1, and now they could go down to 0.
Clarify, it's not a program that's programming related. It's really relevant, not one.
Right.
I'll just add, probably was a part of,
So they're probably more geographically located to where the kids are. And for those of you on the phone, Mr. Meyer shared that Headstart has come to Greensburg and has 1 classroom in Hutchinson and 1 classroom in Metzger, or it's going to have. They do, okay. Again, because of the needs of where the parents are. So that could be affecting the ones that we have in our building. Thank you. I did answer the question about the security assessment. Again, it's not a cost for the actual security assessment. It's just the cost for the recommendations to be put in place. And then the fund balance, again, I will send out this PowerPoint presentation to everyone. Any other questions for those in the room or on the phone?
piggyback on what Dr. Owen just said, it's very important to understand that the budgetary relationship for 18-19 as compared to 17-18 is different or dramatic.
Yeah.
That situation, when let's say about 120 kids we ran for the average of 101, that was an all-in cost regardless agnostic of programs. There was no difference. This year, when you look at life skill support, disability support, emotional support, and autism support, those have enrollment targets. So the reconciliation is more true to the program district likes to do. And I would say the only one at this point that's running close is emotional support, middle level of high school. And our hopes is to grow when we get into the special education budget, that we expand emotional support into the elementary level. We have time with that budget conversation. All three other programs are running ahead of the planned enrollments. When she's saying we're tracking 108 kids, I believe the number was 108 students. The number was 95 across those for the budget. See sort of the upscale on that enrollment relationship.
Yes, Ryan. Yes, it's on page 5 of the package that was sent out to you. By district, the 140,665 is broken down by district on page 5. Yes.
Just going back on the Cisco umbrella again. I heard you right. You gotta use realizing revenue of $160,000 related to that sort of thing. There's something else in internet services that was in such a drastic drop off, back that out from 19 budget to 19.
The other programs that have dropped.
Sorry, just for those of you on the phone, John Perry asked about the Cisco AMP, the revenue related to Cisco AMP and umbrella, and comparing that to last year, it doesn't really seem to match, and he's just asking what else might have changed. So I'll let Eric answer, and then I'll repeat that for those on the phone.
We used to provide exchange services, email services online. Over the last 2 years, those services have dropped away with districts moving to Office 365 or Google. So this is the last year that we will be offering exchange services. We have all except one entity migrated off of our exchange services.
For those of you on the phone, Eric explained that we had email exchange services that were provided. The 18-19 year is the last year that is being provided because districts no longer need to purchase those services. You can get them from Office 365 or Google. Anything else?
Is there an associated cost to those services that come with that as well?
There were minimal costs because we already had the server infrastructure in place. So they not only ran the exchange services, but they also run the academy, all those other services that we
Anything for those on the phone? Any questions from folks on the phone or on Zoom? I apologize.
Nothing in the chat room just yet.
One of the things I would like to share with you is just, I'm part of our PAIU job alike business manager group, and we've talked numerous times throughout our meetings in the year about what value do member districts get from IUs. I think some districts kind of ask that question themselves. So we internally just try to brainstorm around the things that we see as value. We obviously would like your input as well. I mean, if there are things that you don't agree with or things that you think we've missed, I'd like to know that after I share some of this. But we have obviously the Joint Purchasing Consortium. Not every district participates, but we do offer the fuel and the paper bid coordination, the advertising related to that, as well as the time that's spent here for that process is part of just participating in the consortium. Also, as Eric pointed out, the technology consortium that went into play related to Cisco AMP and Umbrella. We do the statement of statewide system of support directives from PDE related to safe school resources, career readiness, STEM, data support related to test scores and school improvement, future ready, text-dependent analysis support, and consulting related to classroom diagnostic tests. Step Up Westmoreland is a big project this year that kicked off, as well as some other projects that we've had around anti-bullying. PAIU Net is shared at no additional cost or no shared cost. Updates state legislative efforts, access to our facilities here. I mean, you all, whether you know it or not, have access to our facilities at no cost. If you have an event that you need to plan for, project rooms or spaces like this can be utilized at no cost to the district. We have facility agreements or facility rental agreements in place with tiers of what we charge outside areas, but the member districts don't get charged for anything. So those are available. We do various surveys, salary survey, millage surveys, things of that nature. I know that last year we started compiling and have a repository of all contracts for the districts to be able to access. And, our board was very interested in having that availability of all contracts, not just, collective bargaining agreements with teachers, but also superintendents, business managers, support staff, things of that nature. So, and then we also have our councils that we do. So, and safe schools initiatives, things like that. So, if there's anything that you want to bring to our attention or that you think that we need to be focusing on, things that you would like to see us be doing, I would appreciate hearing that. Anything else? All right. Well, I appreciate you all coming, participating via Zoom or in person. I would ask the business managers to hold back just for a second. I do have an update for them. It's very, very brief, related to where we're at with the field bid, and also with WB Mason in precluding them from bidding for the future paper bid. So
Thanks again for all of your hard work, Lynn.
Thank you.
And getting this organized and having a logical presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, enjoy your day.
All right.
Drive safely.